Welcome to Erase Race Live. It's Friday night, 7 p.m. Central Time, and it's time for Erase Race to get live with you. And tonight we got a really good show, and I'm really excited about it because we have our guest that's just going to be awesome. We're going to have some dialogue, and we're going to talk about life. But we got Renita Hills from Indianapolis here on the mic today, and so I'm really excited about that. And our subjects are going to be really good because we're talking about not just race, but we're going to talk about Kanye because that's a lot of big news right now. And so we're going to talk about Kanye tonight. And we want to get your comments. You'll have an opportunity. Normally, I have time for you to answer the question of the day, but we don't have a question today. But we want you to comment about Kanye. Comment about Kanye because that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be addressing. Okay. So let me take care of some administrative things. We gave away our T-shirt last week because we had a question of the week, and it went to Natalie Warren Lofton out there in Las Vegas, and so she got the T-shirt. She needs a picture so we can advertise our Erase Race. So you can get one of the Erase Race T-shirts. You can see my T-shirt. I need to move my banner so you can see my T-shirt, but you can get one of those. Pay attention every week because we'll have the Erase Race question of the week, and if you answer that question, then we'll send you one of these T-shirts. You can then mark it for us, and you can get people around the country to Erase Race. And as we talk about being around the country, I want to update you on the tour status. If you go to our website, eraseraces.com, you can see out there that I've completed more than 3/4 of the tour. We've got about 20 plus cities left, and I've done 81 cities. So everywhere from Texas up to North Dakota and eastward, we've cleaned that up, and we'll be heading out west in a week and a half. And so stay tuned, pay attention, and get in on the tour so you can see all the great places and the great people that I'm meeting everywhere, because Renita Hills is one of those people that we met when we were in Indianapolis, and what a great time we had. So our country is in dire straits right now because we don't do the thing that I think needs to be done, and that is where we go out and we meet each other and we talk with each other. And so tonight, Renita and I are going to talk with you, and you're going to see how that dialogue just really enhances not only our communication, but the communication of everybody that's paying attention to the dialogue. So that's really cool. All right, so we're going to start tonight, and we're going to talk about Kanye. One of the greatest things would be if we had the video and could show you some of the dialogue and some of the things he said. But we do have some of his quotes. But I want to just lay a little background on Kanye and I'm the last guy to really talk about Kanye because I don't know anything about him. So all of my information, so I want to caveat everything that I say tonight because I've got about a week and a half or 2 weeks at the most worth of Kanye knowledge. I remember hearing about a song he made a long time ago called Jesus Walks, and that was many moons ago. And I discarded him. So anything that I say tonight is from ignorance or from knowledge of the last 2 weeks. So any knowledge I've gleaned has come in the last 2 weeks. And so that's what I'm talking about. And so this is really the background. Kanye West, very eccentric artist, performer, rapper, and a guy who's been out there for quite a while now. He's 42 years old. And over the last few months, actually he says his conversion really took place in April, but he's been making music and had this Jesus is King album slated for release for this past month. And of course it was released just a week or two ago. And man, did it chart success. It's already charted really big success, and everybody expected it to do that. But what's amazing is the number of people, I think, in the Christian community who have both accepted it and rejected it. And so that's what I'm talking about tonight, because there's been a lot of accepting and rejecting of the message of Kanye. And Kanye is one of those people, quite controversial, everybody knows. And I've been talking to my guest Renita about it. We talked about his life of contradiction. So that's what I know about Kanye, and I'm going to turn it over to Renita and let her give us any background that she has and what she thinks from the outset. So I stated my knowledge base and where I come from with Kanye. By the way, and I'm going to tell you up front, I love his album. As a Christian, I love what he's doing. I love his conversion, and I'm going to say this as a Christian. I'm going to step out there and say things that you don't hear a lot of Christians saying. I believe God did this work in his life, and I believe it's of God, and so I'm supporting it 100%. Doesn't mean he's perfect and he's going to walk on water like Peter or something. I didn't say that. I said I see the work of God, and what God did in my life is the same thing, same God who's doing what he's doing in Kanye's life. And so I'm going to step out and say that, and I'm not going to be one of those Christians who's saying, I'm going to sit around and I'm going to wait and see. I'm not waiting on anything. I'm thanking God for what he's already done in Kanye's life. So, okay, so that's So that's my bias, you know, because if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that's my bias. I'm gonna state it up front. That's so all my viewpoints are gonna be with that in the background so that you know. All right, so we got Renita Hills, and so Renita, go ahead and introduce yourself. Renita's amazing, and she's got a great background, voice of the victims. She's just she has a great ministry. I call it a ministry. She calls it her job, but it's a ministry because she's doing some great healing. And I think that's what our country is going to need more of. And so I want to introduce you all to Miss Renita Hills. Go ahead, Renita.
Good evening, and thank you so much. I always say when people introduce me, I'm like, who are they talking about? But I do love what I do. God is good, and I'm honored to be on the show tonight. Voice of the Victim, like you said, work with victims and survivors of domestic abuse, abusive behaviors, and we've been blessed to be trained to be able to work with people who have endured sexual assault. We help them to transition from being a victim to survivor to ultimately thriver in spite of the abuse they've endured. I have been blessed. I have been truly, truly blessed to go through this with people because I'm a survivor myself. And then until you know the walk, it's easier to tell somebody how to get where they're going if you've been there. So that's what I've been blessed to be able to do. And I've just been honored to meet you face to face as you traveled across the country. We're going to call you one of the Globetrotters. You just been rolling around.
Yes. And so, and how does what you do with Voice of the Victim, how does that play into this thing that we're talking about now? As we talking about how to relate to people without regard to skin color, how does that? Because I think there's probably some type of connection there as you begin to work with people in that situation. How do you see that working?
It absolutely has a connection. We just had an event last week, and one of the main points we bring out is domestic violence does not care whether you're black, you're white, you're brown, you're red, you're yellow. It doesn't care about your socioeconomic status. It doesn't care if you live, well, here, Carmel and Fishers is the upper crust, or if you live wherever, or in Gary. Domestic violence has no respect of persons. Now, when I'm dealing with people, I find myself having to, what's the word, code change? Sometimes I have to find myself code changing because I want you to be able to feel comfortable talking to me. So I have to come to where you are to get you where you need to be. Not where I need you to be, but where you need to be. So when I'm working with a person of color, I listen more than I talk so that when I talk, I know how to reach them to get them the best results that they want. I always come to the table as a blank page, and I don't fight any harder than you do. But when it comes to race, I have to take into account that sometimes it is harder for people who don't look like me to, number one, talk to me and be honest and transparent with me. Because of that, and my end game is to bring people out of domestic violence and into a safe place, I sometimes send people who look like them because you'll be more apt to talk to somebody who looks like you. So if I feel like it's not quite going right, I will excuse myself and I will take the back seat and I'll let my counterpart do the most of the talking while I sit and take notes. I'll do the protective order. I'll do the typing part of the protective order while they do the narrative part. There are times with the age, even with age, some of our senior citizens who have been abused won't tell a young child that's the same age as their granddaughters that they've been abused. But they'll talk to me because I'm a seasoned person. We talked about this earlier. We're when you have more years under your belt, there's more easy to talk to them. So we have to adapt to whatever scenario we come across. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, race is something that we have to adjust to. Black, white, I have a Latino on my board. I have someone who's from India, literally from India, who is on the board, who sits, and she helps to work through those race issues.
Well, let me ask you this. You talked about how trauma sees no color. Is it possible, and will there be a time when, because of the experiences of trauma and what people have experienced, that is there a trauma that happens that's so devastating to people that you don't matter? Your color, the person who's ministering to that trauma, doesn't matter, or does it? Are there cases like that, or is it always you're kind of sensitive to that.
Absolutely. When I go to the hospital and I'm looking at that person on that bed, they don't care who is there to help. They just want help. So there is a place that where I don't care where the help comes from. Somebody throw me a lifeline and pull me out of the mess that I've gotten myself into, or that someone else has put me into. I went to the hospital one time, and this beautiful, beautiful young lady who did not look like me, she looked up at me, and her first thought was, what, you could tell it was like, why are you here? And I said, I'm just here to listen. And then she started talking, and she looked at my face to see how I was going to react. And I gave her all the compassion I had in my heart. And once she saw that I wasn't going to be judgmental because she didn't look like me, I didn't call her out on anything. I just said, I understand. I'm here to help. Tell me what you need. Once she realized I was there to give her what she needed to get from this place of hurt and pain and trauma and distress to where she felt safe and can move on. Once she felt that I was truly there for her, the floodgates came a-rolling, and I was able to really do some help. At the end of the day, I think we talked about this once before. Once we learn to take each other for who we are and not what we look like, we can break any barrier.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and that's that's the message right there. To get that point. And sometimes it seems like that we have to have such devastation in our life to get to that point. And I think that's why, kind of like in our society, we have so many bad things happening, and it's probably to bring us to that point of devastation so that we understand that people are people, and we need to start dealing with them that way. So
When you were saying that, I had this flashback of when 9/11 happened. My brother worked in the Twin Towers, and I was blessed that he had gotten another job and left about 18 months earlier. But one of the things he told me was when people came out, they were all covered with soot and mess and
good one.
garbage and trash. You couldn't tell what a person was underneath that. And they just embraced and helped each other. It didn't matter if you were black, white, green, purple, orange. They embraced because they were all covered with mess.
What a
If
message.
we could just take that same mentality and not care what I look like under the mess, or under the pretty dress, or under the blonde hair, blue eyes, kinky curls, dreads, or whatever, underneath all that, there's a person. There is a human person that just wants to connect. If you take the opportunity to connect with the person and not worry about the color, we can go so much farther.
Yes, good word. Yeah, we talk about shared adversity, and it's only when that adversity is shared. If we share the same adversity, and I think being in the United States at this time in our country, we're going to share some adversity together. And if we can weather that adversity together, then I think it will allow us to begin to look at each other as the people that we actually are. So, very good comments, very good words, and good stuff. Now, let's talk about some race stuff. Let's talk about real race stuff with and really. Kanye. Kanye is, like we said, one of these things of contradiction. The same Kanye who said George Bush hates black people. He said it's about George Bush when he was president. He said George Bush hates black people. And then with Trump in office, he puts on a MAGA hat. So what do you think is happening there? And I mean, and now think about this in the context of this too. So Kanye is darker melanin and his wife is lighter melanin. And so he's a guy like that, and he's got this view on these people. So when I start looking for erase race type people, is Kanye a supportive of what I'm saying, erase race, or is he not? Because he uses a lot of race talk, but he seems to live something different. Like we said, we see a contradiction. So what do you think?
Kanye is an enigma wrapped in a quandary with a big question mark.
Okay.
He kind of throws me for a loop, but you have to take him where he is at the moment. I think I don't remember hearing as much about the George Bush thing, but he does make me wonder about the Trump thing, how he feels so strongly about Trump. I'm not sure how to work with that one. You have somebody who's blatantly disrespectful to anything that does not look like him. And you're part of that does not look like Trump. You know, he's part of the people that does not look like Trump. And he blatantly, President Trump, to give him respect that's due, has been very, very direct and clear that he doesn't want to have anything to do with us. But then you have people like Kanye that steps on board. I don't know how to take that. I don't know how to take it.
You got Kanye, you know Candace Owens, you got Kanye,
I've heard it.
You got Candace Owens, and he's also got this one of the preachers. He got some preachers or whatever. So he's got kind of a group of people who are darker melanin, who think that President Trump is not racist and sympathetic to the plight of people. Now, so being the race guy,
now you got me twirling.
Well, because the thing is, for us to think about that, and that's what we talk about in our rules for dialogue. Can we understand how other people can have a view contrary to ours? Can we understand how that? Because that's one of, I think, the big issues is in our country. Can that person, remember Hillary Clinton talked about Trump's deplorables. These are the people. Anybody who supported Trump was a deplorable. And so my question was always, and the question I'm asking now is, can people disagree with us and have a different view and be okay people? Or do they automatically become not okay because they have a different viewpoint than I do? Just so if Kanye wears a MAGA hat, the MAGA hat has been a big thing in our country for the last year and a half, 2 years, because if you put on a MAGA hat, then people are going to hate you or people are going to love you, And so can somebody put on a MAGA hat and be okay with you?
With me personally, I think I could. Mm-hmm. Me personally.
Could you go to dinner with them?
I'm sorry?
Could you go to dinner with them? They got a MAGA hat on. Would you go out to dinner with them?
It would be a stretch, but I think I could. And I'm going to tell you why it would be a stretch. And we're being perfectly transparent here, completely transparent. We would go out to dinner, and you're in my hometown where people know me, and I'm sitting at dinner, and I don't want the illusion that I'm alienating anything or anyone. Am I making sense? Because I have, when that person goes back to wherever they're going, I still have to run a business. I'm being transparent. Would I alienate? I don't think I would. Would I isolate, or would I'm not going to be your friend because you're a Trump? Because I have friends who are Trump supporters. I do know people who are Trump supporters, and I don't alienate or separate myself from them because of that. We talked about this earlier. I don't have to agree with you. I just want to understand you. Mm-hmm. I want to understand your point of view. I want to understand why you're such a major Trump supporter. Now, for me to sit across the table with somebody with the MAGA hat, I would expect and hope that they will respect my feelings and not wear the hat. I'm willing to sit across the table and listen to your points of view. Can you meet me halfway and not wear the hat?
Okay, and so if they say, well, yeah, but it's just a hat, and you know me, Renita, we're friends, So, and I just want to wear the hat. Why would you make me take off my hat? Are you saying you don't accept me as a person? Because
I would flip it right back around and say, and you know me, you know my stance. So I'm willing to sit and talk with you, and I'm willing to hear anything you have to say. The only thing I'm asking is that you not wear the hat. And I'm not saying don't wear it at all. Just keep it in your car.
Okay, so here we go. I think here's the rub. We're at the point now, because in our country today, everybody, we talked about this before. I said everybody is expecting somebody else to have to compromise, but I want to get my way, and nobody's willing to say, I'm going to give in, because everybody's we got this win mentality. I've got to win, kind of like when we were talking about Kirk Franklin and TBN. Somebody's got to decide, okay, yes, this offended me, but for the sake of unity, and maybe that's why I'm the unity movement guy, because I'm feeling like, well, you can go ahead and offend me. I'm going in for unity because that's my ultimate objective. So I'll be willing to take an offense if it's going to bring us some unity. And so, how do we get to that point? How do we get to that point? And I think the key is, I mean, we're trying to challenge individuals, but we want it to happen in a bigger context of groups of people to say, because most people try to speak for, I'm speaking for the darker melon or the black people. And they got upset about Amber Geiger because the judge hugged her and because of that or whatever. And they're speaking for, and some people started saying black people shouldn't be so forgiving. And I'm saying, is there anybody who wants to say, I will give up my right to have this for the sake of unity?
Now, give up the right. Let's go back to me and the table with the hat.
Okay.
I think at some point I probably will say, okay, fine, but I need you to be aware that that hat offends. I don't want to take an offense and you not even be aware that it offends. Am I making sense?
Yeah, now it offends. Now, with that person that you're having dinner with, it offends you, or you're saying it's going to offend some of the people when we go out in public?
No, that wearing that hat would offend me personally. Let's say it's offending me personally.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to say that you know who I am, you know what I am, you know what I believe in. Can we not do that? And if we are having some type of relationship, like you said, we talked earlier, come to the table with the relationship of mutual, we don't want to offend. I will give this if you will give that. Let's come to a median ground. If there is no medium ground, and like you said, the most important thing is to talk. The hat is not as important as the conversation that could possibly come out of the conversation at dinner. But I will make you aware that offends. It's the same thing as somebody comes to the table smoking a cigarette. I don't like cigarette smoke. Do you mind not doing that? Or they're swearing profanely, using profane language around me. I'm not fond of that. Please, can you talk without the profanity? The same thing will go with the hat. I'm not with that, but can you take it off? And if you choose not to, okay, well, let's have the conversation.
And so, all right, so that's the MAGA hat. So we had a comment. Would you have dinner with someone wearing a Black Panther hat? Would you have the same issue if they had on a Black Panther hat? And when I say Black Panther, I don't mean the movie Black Panther. I mean the Black Power 1960s Black Panthers.
Actually, I probably would. And I mean, maybe not from the same angle.
Mm-hmm.
But I probably would, but maybe not from the same angle. Maybe not for the same reasons. Am I making sense? I never thought about it, so you threw a curveball at me.
Yeah, well, it was a comment, which is a good one because and here's the deal: because we talk about these issues they're on both sides. I mean, any one of these issues, there's going to be two sides because for any view that we take, and that's what I think is highlighted here, that it's part of our nature, it's part of our culture to take the position that supports our groupthink, what culture has taught us. And if culture has taught us that you are Black and you should think this way and behave this way, and that's why I think what a lot of the fixation is on Trump and the MAGA thing is that it seems to be antithetical or opposite any view that quote unquote Black people would have. And so I think he's been branded that way. And so I think, and if anybody, I can ask Marie. Marie's our marketing person. You brand something properly. If you're good at branding, then, and I think the media does it. The media does it. Our culture does it. They brand certain things, and we don't really understand that we're being programmed. And I think that's, I listened to Kanye talk last week, and I listened to a lot of Kanye. I spent probably too much time listening to Kanye. But that was one of the points that he was making. He said, and he made this point, and this is one you can comment on after I say it. He said, Black people have to get out of Democratic Party thinking and start independent thought. So what do you think about that?
I agree. We think Democrats are always going to be one way, Republicans are going to be all the other way. we have to start looking at it. Okay, what's the best thing for the mass group of people, whatever party they're in. So yes, and we've been taught the Democrats are the best people, the best one for the black folks. But when you go back to what the Democrats were birthed, they were doing what the Republicans are doing now. So we kind of switched roles, if I'm remembering my history right.
Right.
We kind of switched roles politically. But I agree. You go with what's best for the people. Whoever, whether they're the horse, the donkey, or the elephant, go for whoever is best for the people.
And so, and especially in your business, how without trauma? I mean, because here's the thing, and I think that in our society, America's a prosperous society by worldly standards, far outpacing other countries and the lifestyles that we lead. And are we so comfortable that we are not ready to compromise in order to get along? In other words, my wife and I were in Nigeria this past summer, and we as we drive down the street, it's just amazing the people that you see on a regular day out in the streets, because everything is outside and they don't have luxurious homes to go in and put themselves in and segregate themselves off from the rest of society. So they're all out in the streets and they're having this dialogue. As soon as we landed back in Houston and we started driving, we were like, it's like a ghost town. Nobody's out. And that's because everybody's inside. And so how do we get to this point then of really knowing? Because how am I going to meet? I'm a dark melanin guy. Okay. What's it going to take for me to go and meet a light melanin guy? And why should I? I don't need to. I don't really need to, because I'm getting along fine. I go to work every day. I do this or whatever, and I don't have to engage. So how do we fix that?
I think and correct me if I'm answering the question opposite of what you're asking. Mm-hmm. I think we as the melanin people with melanin period have to come together and stop separating each other between light and dark.
Okay, but is that a darker melanin problem within the dark melanin, or is that a melanin problem across the board? Because if we just do it for dark melanin, don't we still have that issue then with light melanin? Isn't it just a melanin issue across the board?
I think it's a melanin issue across the board, but I think because you and I, in our own culture, we are separated amongst ourselves. We are not accepting of each other.
Yes.
It goes back to being slavery, is between the house and the field, and the slave masters literally would say, this one is better than this one, and they would put dissension between us. That goes back to, and correct my history if I'm wrong.
No,
that goes back to the Willie Lynch letters, mm-hmm. How to keep a slaves for at least 200 years, and he got it for 400, and even today. So you bring dissension between them. The light ones go in the house and the dark ones go outside, and we make them think that they're better than them, and we bring dissension and separation amongst us. And it has grown to even now where we think, hey, she has a light skin, so she's a prettier one, and the darker one is not as pretty. And if we're not together, then how are we going to accept somebody with, and I don't, correct me if I'm saying it wrong, with a whole lot less melanin than we do?
Well, that's the question. And the question is, so if you remove all melanin criteria, don't you fix the whole thing?
Yes, I think we do.
So that way you don't have a darker and between dark and lighter dark melanin, and you don't have a problem with really light melanin. So I'm saying that's why in Erase Race, I'm saying the issues, any solutions that we have inside of any particular group of people is the same solution that we need to exercise for all people.
Correct.
And yeah, because I think that's our thing, getting people to see that. Race is.
My question for you is, where should we start? Should we start with our own, or should go from the inside out, or from the outside in? We
start with me individually. It's got to start with me. Toby Mac has got a great song talking about it starts with me. And in the song, he talks about, by the way, sending props out for Toby Mac. Toby Mac lost his son last week. Got to be tragic. For those people who know Toby Mac, he's a Christian rap artist, and he's just always been a really good guy. But he lost his son last week, and so prayers for Toby Mac. But Toby Mac has this great song, which I wanted to talk to him about using while we go out on tour. He calls It Starts With Me. And he says, and he makes the point, my granddaddy was messed up and my daddy was messed up. So I have to start, it has to start with me. They had bad views on race. And I can say the same thing. I didn't know my grandfather on my dad's side, but my dad racially is really messed up. And he doesn't understand. He's 91. He doesn't understand it because he was at a different time, and he just can't imagine. When I told him what I'm doing, I'm going around the country doing this. You should see the look he gave me. And it was really funny. And it has to do with our expectations of people, because I understand that my dad can't comprehend the things that I'm talking about. I asked my dad, I said, when was the first time you had an a racial experience with people outside of your skin color? And he said, never. I never had one. He said, I was always in schools and segregated schools. I went to segregated college. Then I worked at an HBCU all of my life. I lived in Prairie View. So he can't possibly understand how I could have this goal of doing what I'm doing and reaching out to people who are totally different than I am, things like that. So I think it has to start with us. And so it's not going to start with me saying, I'm going to start with my people, because everybody's got to be my people. It's not going to start with people that are my color, because I'm not really considering color. So it starts with me saying, I'm Carlen. Who are you? Let's talk about life, And that's one of the things we're going to do with Erase Race. We're going to go around and get people to engage. And here's the key word, I think: intentionality. Intentionality. So let's transition to that thing that we were talking about before about Kirk Franklin and TBN. All right. So give a little background, then I'll let you weigh in on that, because we talked about this earlier. I did with Renita. Kirk Franklin, for those who don't know, I listen to a lot of Christian music. That's why we got into this Kanye thing. But Kirk Franklin, for those who don't know, is a Christian artist, very popular Christian artist, very big. And this week he called for a boycott of TBN, which is the Trinity Broadcasting Network. And it is the big, and I hate to use this word because I'm the Erase Race guy, but they call it it's run by, they say, white people, and it's the Broadcasting Network for Christians. And so they put on the Dove Awards, and Kirk Franklin was at the award, and he wanted to give a shout out to the Atiana Jefferson, who was the lady, her family, because she was the lady killed in Fort Worth a couple of weeks ago. And they edited out when they ran the show live. They cut that part out for whatever reason. So he called for a boycott. And so how do we handle that, Renita? Well, what do we do there? Because he called for the boycott, and now once again you got a them versus us. It's a them versus us thing. Do we pick a side and say, all right, I'm on this side because they're right, and what do you think?
Correct me if I'm wrong. When I read it, he said that he didn't call for one. He just said he was boycotting.
Yes.
Now, other Christian artists joined him, but he didn't ask anybody to boycott.
Correct.
And what we discussed earlier, I think it wasn't just that they did it this one time. It happened. This is the second time it's happened to him. It happened to him once before, as Philandro Castro, I believe is
Castillo.
Pronounce it. Mm-hmm. When he was shot and killed, the way he won another award, and at that time they cut his speech. Then he came to the table, told them, I didn't like that. What I wanted to say. Don't cut my stuff. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but when I say what I say, don't cut what I say, because this is what I needed to say. And I wanted to recognize and honor and respect those whose lives were taken away through police and gun violence. So then when it happened again this time, he went to the table and said, okay, this is the second time. You told me last time it wasn't going to happen again. Mm-hmm. Well, it happened again. I'm not coming back. So I'm seeing it from Kirk Franklin's point of view. I'm not saying it's necessarily right, wrong, or indifferent, but I see his point. We've had this conversation. We've talked about this. I've asked you not to do this again. You said you apologized. We're not going to do this again. It was an error. We messed up. Then here it comes again. I'm recognizing and honoring the family of Atiana and saying, let's pray for her. This was unjust, whatever the case he said, because I didn't hear the whole speech. and you cut my speech again. Now there's a problem, because now you're deliberately and outright disrespecting what I asked after I've already asked you once before. So I see his point.
Okay.
He didn't
So,
every,
all right. So is there a resolution, or is there just, first of all, so we get to that point, rules for dialogue, we understand. So now we understand his point. We understand what they did. What is the solution? Do we have a solution, or are we just at an impasse? And I think that's the challenge to our country. How do we get beyond these impasses to a solution?
I think it's going to have to come back with giving Kurt Franklin a moment, because you shouldn't just say, get over being upset, because being angry, being upset, being irritated, those are all part of the emotions that you have to address. You have to address them. He has a right to acknowledge that he's angry, he's upset, he's disappointed,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case may be. But at some point, they're gonna have to come back to the table and have that conversation again, and maybe have it with a third party, or another neutral party. So, because I think you and I had this conversation before. I'm going to use my remote control this time, where, what do you see? Oh, I see numbers on my remote control. There's no numbers on the remote control. Yes, there is, because you see numbers. I see a blank side. We have to get somebody who's going to help you see what I see and help me see what you see. We have to get to that point, and it's going to have to come with both people willing to sit to the table with that third party or that neutral party, helping the other person see, and then coming to a neutral ground on, don't cut my stuff, or if you're going to cut my stuff, let me know ahead so I can fix mine, to be where we're mutually happy with what's being said.
Yeah, good points. And I think our challenge is really, how we talked about it. It's got to be deeper than the dialogue. It's got to be deeper than the discussion, and it's got to be deeper than the issue at hand. Our relationships.
Yes.
Our relationships. Because if I tell you what, if we only come together, and like in the situation with Kirk Franklin, if he shows up at the W Ward on its annual basis, and he has an expectation for them on his annual basis, and they cut him out on an annual basis, then that relationship is not deep enough to survive a disagreement. And so, like one of the guys commenting, Curtis, it starts in our backyard. It starts with what you're doing, the relationship you're building with your neighbor. And that's one of the things Race is going to do big time. We're going to find ways to get people to really engage, because, think about how people, they work in an office with somebody, and they might work with somebody in office for 3 years and not really know those people. I know that they do good work on this project. When we work this, they do this, they type well, and they do those kind of things. But do you really know them? I mean, did you go when they had a new birth, or when their child was getting baptized, or when their child was playing in some game, did you go to the event? Do you know them that well? I was in one of these discussions because I drive around the country, and this one lady, she wanted to talk about my car. And she was from the very beginning, she was very upset that I was talking about the concept of erasing race. Because she said, there's no way, no, you cannot erase race. You're erasing my heritage. You're erasing my history. You're erasing all these things about me. And as we had the discussion, I realized that, wow, she's into this thing. She's not going to give that up. And because I was talking to her about, well, but what if it would give more unity? She's like, and she was, no. I just can't give that up, because she wasn't concerned about unity. She was more concerned that I have this thing, because there's some value in this thing that I have. And so after I talked to her about, well, if unity is the objective, then maybe perhaps she would be willing to get up. And she never really kind of came back. I was like, wow, this is going to be tough to teach people that there's something better than me having my way, and that is for us coming together. Those are the two things. People are more comfortable having what they have than potentially having something better in these relationships. And so that's what I think Curtis was talking about, because Curtis and I, we were neighbors, and he's lighter melanin, and we just, man, our families, our daughters were born near the same time. So we kind of grew up together, and we moved around the world, different places, and we were always engaged with them and just tight with them. And so our relationship was so deep that when we had differences about melanin, when we had those issues, our relationship was always going to survive, even today. If it happens today, and it could, but our relationship is deeper than any of those events that could happen, than anything that could happen in the world, any events. And it doesn't mean we're going to agree, because he's a Florida Gator, and he's, how Florida Gators are. That's all they believe in. And so I disagree with him on a lot of stuff, but our relationship's deeper than all that stuff. And I think that's the challenge. And so, and especially in your line of work, that would be great if we could do that, and at the same time say, realize that skin color doesn't matter anymore.
But we got to start somewhere, though.
So where do you start?
It's going to start with like I did with the remote, understanding. I don't have to agree with you. Don't have to agree with you. I just need to understand your point of view. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to like it.
But let me ask you this, Renita. I hate to interrupt you, but let me ask you this. If we start with the point where I'm just trying to understand you, or I'm just trying to see from your viewpoint, I guess it could be, is that in fact relationship building? Because my whole thing is relationship building. And question is, all right, could it also not be relationship building?
It could go both ways.
Okay.
It can absolutely go both ways.
Okay.
But it just depends on the people that are involved, and you have to be willing to take the risk.
Well, this is a hard question I'm going to ask you, because I'm thinking about this as I ask it, and I don't know. So, in my hierarchy of or my taxonomy of working, what should come first? Should I work on understanding or relationship? Because they might, when they're not going to be the same, which one should take priority? And I'm thinking about that now.
It depends on the person that's in front of you at the time. You're going to have to be the chameleon, in my opinion. And I only say that because that's what I have to do with my clientele as well. I have to treat each domestic violence case the way a doctor would treat 5 women in the same room that just walked in the door and they say have breast cancer on the same breast. That one woman, number one, has no history in her family of breast cancer. She's 5'5" and she eats superbly and drinks the amount of water she's supposed to. She's in excellent eating wise health. She works out and everything. Woman number 2 is not. She's the exact opposite. Woman number 3 is in the middle, but she has a Latino background and she eats a lot of spicy foods. She has that. You have to handle each one, and the doctor's going to give each one of them a different type of chemo. They're going to attack that cancer in a different way. So you're going to have to adjust, and you're going to have to chameleonize. That's one of the words I threw together. Your approach to the person you're working with. It cannot be blanket. It's not cookie cutter.
And so when I do that, am I working on but is my objective in doing that? What is my objective in doing that? I guess that's the question I want to ask you. So is my objective from the viewpoint of I'm doing this for, what is my primary goal here? Am I trying to get an understanding, or am I trying to build a relationship? Because I think I'm trying to get over my whole bias, which is I think relationships have to be preeminent and primary and have to be above everything else. And because we get the relationship, then we can start walking down that road and we'll see things from the understanding that we're trying to get if we have the relationship right. Like, because I know my friend Curtis there, I know he's crazy about the Gator, and I already know that because our relationship's so deep. I know the things he likes, the thing he dislikes, and I know where an argument's going to come up. I know that. So I'm trying to see if that's what we're going for there, or if we're just going for, like Hank here says, listen with an open mind rather than listening to respond. So I can hear very well what you're saying and not have a relationship. I can, I'm saying I can do that and not care about my relationship though. So what do you think?
Your end game is, what I'm hearing you say is your end game is building relationships so that you can have the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be your end game, but it can't be your only game.
Oh, okay.
It cannot be your only game.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to say, okay, I understand you, but I'm going to understand you from a distance. understanding without the relationship. You have to be willing to accept that somebody might be that person that, okay, I got you, I hear you, but we ain't gonna be friends. So you go on over there while we understand each other from a distance.
But so is that
Not
like
everybody,
is that
not
like
everybody wants a relationship.
so is that like what Kirk Franklin's doing with the TBN? All right, we're gonna understand from a distance. I'm backing off.
Yeah, I can see that being what he's trying to do. I can see that being like, okay, because we're if I hit this now while I'm upset or while the fire is hot, this is going to make a bad situation. So sometimes it's better to back off, let things do what they're going to do, and I'm just going to love you from a distance. The same thing I tell my clients all the time. You can still love that man or that woman that abused you. You ain't got to live with them. You can still understand that person without having a relationship with them.
All right, well, let's transition that to the group mentality, and that's what in our country, and let's talk about people groups. And so if we talk about darker melanin people versus lighter melanin people, what if someone says that, well, that's kind of where we are in this country. Since they are this way, we're gonna have our own church, we're gonna have our own schools, we're gonna have our own businesses, we have our own, and so we're doing that. Because I'm of the opinion. So what do you think about that? Because I'm of the opinion that that's not helping us. I'm of the opinion. I'm going to change my title to, you know what I'm going to make my title? I'm going to be called an integrationist. I said when they start putting my caption down for things, I'm going to put Carlen Charleston, integrationist. Because that's my job, to make everybody, we're going to integrate. No more segregation, no more this, that, And then when I become president, you're going to have to marry somebody who's different melanin color than you. It has to vary by so many shades. All right, that's crazy, but that's my point. I want to be the integrationist. Yeah, I want to be the integrationist.
So, and I think you'd be the perfect person for that job. But then it goes right back to what we said. It starts with you. I mean, how are we going to get a culture, a whole group of people to be integrated if we're not willing to take the risk and integrate? How are we going to get a whole group of people to build relationships, or even if it's a distant relationship, if we're not as an individual willing? So in order to get the group, it's a whole bunch of individuals. Mm-hmm. So you have to go one individual at a time. I agree with you. It's going to take us working as a unit.
Yeah, and so we got some plans for that too. We got some initiatives that specifically with Erase Race do just that. I mean, they make people, matter of fact, and of course my staff kind of gets on me because I'm always thinking of new ideas about how to do this, because I go to bed at night thinking about that. How do we get people to really decide to integrate? Because it is hard, and I think the problem is that we do have so much personal comfort and we're satisfied where we are. And then when an event happens that is a result of our segregation, then we blame other people. And I was like, that's our fault. That's all of our fault, because we so segregated ourselves. And as soon as something bad happens, we point the finger at the other group. And so that's why I want to be the integrationist. And so, very good. Let me see what Hank is saying here. Oh, you got any other comments? I want to see what somebody's making a comment. Wow. And so Hank, he had a high school classmate, somebody he's known for probably 30, 40 years, ended their relationship because he didn't support Trump. And her statement was to him, "I thought I knew you." Wow. See, that's crazy. That is crazy. So how do you deal with that?
Wow. That's deep.
Evidently and this is what people do, and I think this is what's happening. It's the box. When you check the box that says Black, African American, white, whatever like that, we are programming ourselves. When you go and when somebody says, when we watch the news and they say this white police officer shoots a black, we are being programmed. When we hear white, we hear black, we hear that, we are being programmed. And as such, then it's not surprising that Hank's classmate would say such a thing, because they've been programmed to believe something that they thought about the image that has been created for you, Hank. So our society's created. There's an image created for me, Renita, you have an image created for you, and people expect you to be in that box. And if you step outside of that box, I mean, here's an example. Somebody said, when I look at you, I don't see you as a black person. Now that sounds very bad, right? That sounds very bad. And I heard somebody say, well, then I heard this lady respond to that. She said, well, then you don't see me because I am black, and that's part of who I am. And I said, you had two problems in that from both sides. The person who says, I don't see you as a black person was saying, I had black people in this box and I expected you to be in that box. And the other person receiving it says, hey, I belong in that box and it's who I am. So don't take me out of that box. And so they both kind of are messed up mentalities. And it's a result of race that both of the mentalities are messed up. One person saying, I don't see you in that box that I thought you fit in. And the other person saying, oh, look, I belong in that box because that's what I am. You know, so race messed us up.
Wow, that's deep.
That is very deep. You know,
yeah.
And so I think, you know, Hank, I try to get Hank because I try to get Hank to do one of these things with his wife, because Hank's wife is lighter melanin and very nice lady, and I wanted to do one of these, and Hank said, I don't know. I don't know, because there's so many issues with it. There really are, you know. And so it's
exposing yourself.
It is. It really is. And so Erase Race is going to go out there, and we're going to really, because there's some people like Renita and some other people who can talk about this and how exposing yourself in a lot of cases could be good, and it's going to take that for some of us in order to lead other people into this land of what I think is going to be a land of safety, security, and deeper relationship. You know, because I think we're scared. We are scared, and I understand, because there's a lot of things out there. The boogeyman has been painted, and the boogeyman is out there, but I don't think he's as big. And he's not as mean and ferocious as our relationships can be. Our relationships can be so deep. And my sign's going. Oh man, that means it must be time to go. My sign went down. All right. So my background went down. So all right, but hey, any closing remarks, Renita? It's been great having you. I love the dialogue. I love this conversation because it's just engaging deeply, and that's what we plan to do. Continue engaging deeply. That's what we want to do. And so I want to thank you, and you can have some closing remarks here, and you can talk about anything as we get ready to close out.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me on the show. I thank everybody for tuning in and listening. And yeah, you put me out there a little bit. You made me put the mirror to my face and look at me and, you know, be a little transparent on myself, but that's all right. You know, I'm always open for room for improvement, but you ain't had to put me on blast in front of everybody. But that's all right. I still love you guys. I really appreciate it. Hang in there with Carlen. He's doing the best work that we can possibly do for all of us, not just the lighter or the darker or the medium colored melatonin, but all of us to be united as one people underneath the skin. And I say this at the close of my podcast, is beneath your skin and behind your eyes is a beautiful you. Learn to love you. Above all, love you.
Outstanding. I want to thank Renita for being here this evening. It was great to be able to get you here because I met Renita when I went to Indianapolis over about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and it was just great meeting her. And there are a few people that I say are my twin, and Renita's one of them. She's one of my twins, and so we think alike. And so I had to, and it was tough because I had to go out and put her out there because it's tough for me because I know how she thinks. And since she thinks like me, I ask her hard questions that I ask myself, and so that's why she felt put out there. But I want to thank you, Renita. Thank you for even on the short notice saying, yeah, I can be there. I can do that show. And I'm going to have you back. Renita's going to be with me when I go out on the real tour because I'm going to have her go some places and speak about some of the things, both from her voice of victim things and also from the race perspective, because she's one of those people who thinks beyond, lives beyond, and is beyond. So I want to thank Renita for coming this evening. I want to thank you all for tuning in. And we didn't talk as much about Kanye, but there'll be more of that to come, I'm sure, because he's got a lot of stuff, a lot of race implications. And that's what we're doing here. We're erasing race because at the end of the day, remember what we always say, there's only one race and you're in it. So thank you all, and y'all have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.